All right. We are officially live on here. So just give me 2 seconds. I just want to share this with everyone before we get going here. So as I'm sharing this video, one of the things that I just kind of like to reiterate on here, um, the whole purpose. All right. So the whole thing, thank you for everyone for joining us today. Um, the whole point is I've been doing a lot of interviews over the last few months, bringing on different people, some related to real estate, and then in other cases, just some small business owners specific to the Cleveland market. Just trying to do my small part, providing lots of education and information, and as well as supporting some local business owners as we get through this whole pandemic, coronavirus, on and off again situation. So that is the purpose. And I know if you have seen
Small business owners specific to the Cleveland
outside of really trying to. So today I have with me attorney Arlisha Wilson, which this is not her first time visiting me, but she provides such great information. I definitely think it's valuable information to you guys. So we're back on here again. We are answering your questions, but could you introduce yourself to everyone again who may not know you?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Arlisha Wilson. I am an attorney here in Cleveland, Ohio. I practice real estate and bankruptcy law. A lot of my real estate practice includes landlord-tenant law and handling evictions. And so this question is definitely a common question that I get. So thank you, Andrea, for having me on your show to talk to all the people who may have questions about breaking the lease. So good to do it.
Right. So, so we're talking specifically, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to type them in the chat. But we are talking about renters and breaking the lease, and we'll touch on landlords as well, helping those. We can't forget about those landlords out there who may need some assistance, especially right now. So Arlisha, can you tell us what have been some things that you've been hearing in the market as it relates to renters, types of things that they're dealing with, maybe due to COVID-19? Uh-oh. I don't know if it's me or I don't know if it's me. I don't think it's me frozen. It looks like she may be frozen at this moment. So we'll give it a second or two, see what we can do. Sorry, guys. Oh, yep, we lost her. So it definitely was her. Sometimes I'm at my office today, and the internet, even though I have Spectrum here, the office internet is a little slow. So hopefully she'll join us back. But we are definitely going to be talking and answering your questions about renters, breaking your lease, landlords. A lot of landlords are dealing with situations right now that moratorium had ended at the end of June. I know a lot of landlords, as bad as it may sound, may be ready to quickly get their tenants out of their property just because they have not paid rent for several months. And for some landlords, people think of landlords oftentimes as being rich or having a lot of money, but sometimes landlords actually owe and paying loans on their property, owe a mortgage. So they have to, pay for wherever they're currently living, and then as well as they have to pay for pay for their rental property. So not collecting rent from their tenant could put them in a situation. So I have seen cases where that landlord may be anxious So I see Arlisha is back. Okay, we're back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we just kind of left off and I was just asking the questions of what types of things are you seeing in the or hearing about in the market right now as it pertains to renters.
Yeah, so I'm hearing lots of different things, and most of it is just pertaining to landlords who they kind of heartbreaking because all it takes is just for you to understand what you're entitled to as a tenant, and you will be able to fight back with these landlords. So lots of security deposit withholding. I'm getting calls for lots of fraudulent and just really deceptive practices by landlords. I'm also getting calls about and as it relates to breaking leases, there has not keeping utilities on as they should.
Hmm.
Also about just sort of the overall condition of the property. Those issues have also been coming up. So there's a wide array of things that people are calling about. And much of it is just very simply fixed when people are aware of their rights as a tenant.
Okay. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit and start with breaking the lease. So on my standpoint, I oftentimes get people who want to break their lease because they now have decided they want to buy a home. So they want to know, can they break their lease early? Is this something that they can do?
So yes and no. Okay, it's hard to say whether you can break your lease without actually reading your lease,
Okay.
because most times, the lease is going to control and let what the proper procedures are for breaking a lease. Now, you always can break the lease, but the question is going to be whether you're subject to penalties for doing so.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are very few circumstances where you can break a lease and you're not subject to penalties. And those things might include, you went on active duty for the military, or you are a domestic violence. Things like that, you can break the lease with no problem.
Okay.
Another way you can break the lease with no problem is if the property is not habitable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a legal term for basically saying the property is not up to par, it's not livable. So if there's no running water, there is no way for you to connect utilities. If there's mold, can break your lease. Uh-oh. Are you still with me?
I am, but you're kind
Sorry.
of going in and out a little bit.
Okay. I don't know what's up with the connection today.
All right, we'll try to keep going along. Um, so is there something specific that a renter should look for in their lease agreement before signing?
Yes. Yep. So you want to flip to sort of the end of the contract, typically is where it is, and you want to find that termination clause. So there's always going to be a clause in the lease about how you terminate this particular agreement, and you want to see what it says. Or it's going to give you a time frame in which that notice is required. Most times it's going to be 60 days. So you have to provide notice that is in writing to the landlord in order to break the lease. So that's always the first stop. And most times landlords are going to be cooperative unless, you just don't have a good reason to break the lease. So starting with just talking to the landlord and communicating with the landlord about your circumstances, that's always the best place to start in terms of breaking your lease.
Okay. And what about, so right now, there may be a lot of tenants out there that got behind on their rent payments because they were furloughed from work because of coronavirus or lost their job. And so I know there was a pause on evictions. but it sounds like that's opened back up right now. Is there anything that these folks can do if they don't want to be evicted, or how can they work that out?
Yeah, it's so many people are in a position where they can't afford to pay their rent. And so there are rental assistance programs. If you contact the Cleveland Municipal Court, if you're in the city of Cleveland, you can get resources from the housing specialist there about rental assistance. So they created this entire fund for tenants who are unable to pay their rent, hoping to curb the number of evictions that tenants are facing. But aside from that, you have to communicate with your landlord. Most landlords are willing to work with you if you have come up with a plan to, cure your default. They're willing to work with you. Fortunately, if you don't pay your rent, that is grounds for eviction. And so that's the difficult part. It's up to the landlord whether they want to move forward with eviction or not. So if you can stay on that landlord's good side and get them to give you just a little more time, that's probably the most ideal situation, because really there's no defense to non-payment of rent, or very little defenses to non-payment of rent. So you must communicate with your landlord, reach out for help. There's rental assistance programs out here that might be able to help you. So do both of that, communicate and reach out for help.
Okay. What do you say about that renter that is receiving housing vouchers, and maybe their landlord is not taking care of the property? What do you say? So I hear of situations where there's so little housing, affordable housings, or owners are accepting vouchers. So I've seen it where tenants are willing to live in terrible conditions in fear of losing that place and not having anywhere to go. What advice would you give to that individual who feels like they're kind of stuck here?
I don't know what's up with the connection, but it's kind of staticky and I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Um, So maybe we'll just can you hear me now?
Just repeat that.
So there's a lot of tenants that are living in properties and the condition is less than desirable.
So I heard tenants living in properties where the conditions are.
Yep. So tenants are living in properties where the condition of the property is not the best, but they're afraid that if they say something, then they'll lose that space. So what suggestions would you give to those renters?
Yeah, so that's definitely huge, where the conditions are poor, and you feel like if you report it to the landlord or anybody else, you're going to face negative repercussions from the landlord, and that is very illegal. There's lots of case law around this, and it supports the position that what's called retaliatory eviction is illegal. So what you should do is make sure, in just like in any situation, you keep proper documentation. So you want to send the notification to the landlord in writing. Let him know specifically what the problem is. There's mold growing in the bathroom, or there's a hole in my ceiling, or whatever the problem is. Let him know specifically in writing, and that will help to support your defense that the landlord is trying to retaliate against you. Also, if you want to make complaints to, building housing or to the Health and Safety Commission, you also want to make sure that you're doing that in writing, because the way that we build our case on the other end of it is by comparing those dates, right? So if you report to the landlord on June 1st, and then you report to the government on June 15th, and then all of a sudden you've got an eviction on June 21st, then that's going to lend
Uh-oh. I think she went out again, guys. I think she went out. If she goes out again this time, we'll probably do another time where we get together. Yeah, I think she just left out. We might do another recap of this just so we can have. I know it was hard. It was hard for me to hear, and she's providing a lot of great information for you guys. So I just want to make sure that you receive the information. I know a lot of you may be renting or you may be the landlord. We didn't even really get to touch on landlord questions. So I want to provide some tips for you guys. So it looks like she's still gone. So I'm going to end this broadcast, but look for another date where we come back on and we share some information, some tips and tools for you guys. If you're not already, please subscribe or like this channel, share it with your friends and family, always providing lots of information as it relates to Cleveland. Oh, you're back. Maybe I was, oh, she's gone again. Hey. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and end it, and then we'll just plan to reschedule this. Thanks, guys, for joining.